Welcome to the City of Murfreesboro Historic Zoning Commission. This is a special meeting, December 2nd, 2014. It appears that we have a quorum, and so, Robert, could you describe the first item to us?
Sure, Chairman Backlund. Our first agenda item is address is 522 East College Street. Mr. Abbott and his wife, they're requesting to replace the exterior wood clapboard of their house with Hardiplank and paint the material in the same color as the existing house. The property is located on the south side of East College Street, about midway between North Highland and North University Street. The house was built circa 1910 in the colonial revival style of architecture with a hip roof, a dormer, clapboard, and it has a porch with columns and a classical doorway with lights, and it's 2 stories. The house is a contributing structure in the East Main Historic District of the National Register of Historic Places. Like I mentioned earlier, they are having some issues with the wooden clapboard that's on the house right now, and they would like to just go ahead and replace the existing clapboard with Hardiplank. And it's going to have the same exposure as the existing clapboard. And it's going to be, well, I'd take that back. It's not going to be painted in the same color as the house. I think the color may be changing, but we don't rule on the coloring. So, and I've included some photographs of the house in your agenda materials, and I can pass around a copy. This is actually a piece that they brought in, and it's going to be similar to what this is. I know that we have talked about Hardiplank in the Historic District before, and we kind of looked at Hardiplank as being a smooth material instead of the wavy, the rough type material that you're seeing right now. The applicants are in the audience, and they'll be able to answer any questions you might have, and I'll be able to answer any if you have also.
Any members of the board have any questions?
Well, my first one is the current clapboard, is it a rough or is it a smooth?
Some boards are smooth. You can tell the newer boards that have been replaced are smooth. The older boards have a little rough, but we've already talked to the contractor, and we are going to do the smooth hardy board, which that is the rough. That's just the piece he had to give us to bring to y'all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the thickness in the sample that's provided to us, is that the actual thickness of the board itself, or is it just a sample? Do you know?
That was an actual piece of board that he just cut a little square off, so I'm assuming that is the normal standard size of boards. I don't know.
Yeah, it appears to be a little thinner than I would have thought it would be. But the main reason for replacing the clapboard with the Hardiplank or cement board, is it because there's a lot of deterioration in the siding? Could you explain why you're doing it?
It's the deterioration. In the last owner, we bought the house in 2012, and the last owner did replace a lot of boards, but now that we've noticed some rotting where it's literally rotting all the way through and it's getting up next to the windows, and we talked to the contractor, and he said obviously for a more maintenance-free home, because it's just going to be constantly replacing sections since the last owner didn't replace the entire house at the same time. We're just going to have to continuously be replacing the boards and repainting different sections. So we found it more economical to go ahead and place the hardy board on there and paint it. Therefore, we're trying to save the windows as well, and a lot of the rot is butted up next to the windows, and we're hoping that the damage, until we get the boards off, we don't know the extent of the damage around the windows at this point as well.
What would be your guess as the percentage of the total coverage of the yellow clapboard that's on there? What would you guess is the total deteriorated section that you're aware of?
Without the contractors getting up on ladders and getting to the top part, I don't know. We were just looking at the lower portions that we could physically see standing on the ground. So I don't know if I could answer that question. I know the driveway side, the left side of the house, has quite a bit, as well as the back of the house has quite a bit. There is some on the front of the house, around on the right-hand side of the porch. The right-hand side, it looks like most of the weather blows in on the left-hand side, because the right-hand side looked to be, from the ground, pretty stable at this point.
the lower section of the lower floor that you can get closer to and you can see with yourself and touch and point and this?
Yes, and the wood just breaks off.
What, of that portion, what would you guess? It's more than 50% or less than 50%?
Probably less than 50%.
Any other?
Excuse me. You said you were trying to save the windows. Just all I've got is to go by is a photograph, and those windows don't appear to be. They look like newer windows.
They are not newer
Have the windows ever been
windows.
replaced?
To my knowledge, they are not new windows. They're painted shut. We can't even open them. They are the wavy glass. They're single pane. My dog has broke 2 of the lower panes out already jumping on it. So we've had to replace lower panes that do not have the grids in them, but they are not new windows. I don't know if they are original to the house, but I know that they are painted shut.
Did you say they do not have the grids in them?
I'm just talking about the part that the dog broke was the lower part that
Okay.
doesn't have the grid, so the upper part is still the original, but we had to, and we replaced it with single pane.
Have you? Are you just working with the contractor on?
It's, when we purchased the house, we remodeled the entire inside, and it's the same contractor that did the inside of the house.
Has anybody assessed the impact of the added weight that you're going to have when you put this concrete board on the house as opposed to the, in other words, is the framing system, we can't tell anything about the framing system, and I'm asking this from a building technology point of view. Have you taken sections of the siding off?
We have not taken any siding off.
So do you know whether or not you don't know whether or not it has storm sheeting?
I have no knowledge of that. Based on my electric bill, it doesn't have much insulation between the exterior
I
and the
wouldn't
interior.
I wouldn't expect it to have that. I owned a house that was the same period, same sort of issues that you have, and that particular house was storm sheeted with vertical tongue and groove boards that were laid diagonally, and then the siding was attached to the storm sheeting. And one of the issues that you get into is moisture transmission from the inside of the house migrating through to the drier air, which would be outside, especially in the wintertime. If there is no insulation and no vapor barrier on the inside, this particular material, like all concrete, is like a sponge. And it will suck moisture into it and hold it, which can lead to some deterioration of your substrate, your framing, or your storm sheeting. When you remodel the inside of the house, did you go into the walls
We
and
did not.
do any insulation? Okay. Well, on the house that I sold, the house that I lived in, and I had restored it, and the people that bought it, that came in after me, opted to change the siding on the outside because they were facing the same issue. And they clad it in aluminum siding, and I drove by it the other day after about 6 years. They're trying to get it off because
Is this my neighbor?
no,
right down the
this
street?
is in Shelbyville. I just happened to drive by and see it. From an aesthetic point of view, if this is cut to be the same profile, the same exposure, same overlap, my guess is that it's going to look pretty much like this looks.
Yes, and I told the contractor I wanted it exact same width. So
The only thing that concerns me is the long-term impact on your asset that this will create issues for you that you're not facing right now. Of that, I'm certain. Whether those issues are more costly to deal with than working with wood or not, but I would encourage you to, before you engage in this, to investigate behind the siding in an obscure place and look at what you've got and have somebody who is not a salesman and not a contractor to give you an opinion as to the impact of adding this much additional weight to your framing system and your foundation. So,
What type of inspector would I need?
well, I would suggest an architect or an engineer,
Okay.
a structural engineer, who could look at the nature of the framing system and at the foundation to see just how much weight they could come up with a calculation, and then you'd know that before you'd spend all the money to get it up there.
Correct.
It might not be significant, but without doing a little dissection and seeing what is there, it would be of a concern to me as a person who has lived and maintained a house of this size and the exact configuration. It would be a matter of concern, and I think it's just and not likely. If you could find, there may be some engineers around here who would just come look at it for you and say, "Don't worry about it." But if there's a chance that it could have a detrimental impact, I think it would be great if you could at least make an informed decision
Okay.
about that.
Thank you.
Paul, do you also have a concern about the cement board absorbing moisture down the road that will become a problem?
Well, that can be an issue with wood as well.
Yeah.
Generally, today, when this house was built, they probably did not back prime the clapboards that were put on the house. If I were going to today, if I were replacing material, I would back prime the new wood if I was using wood, and I would definitely paint this on both sides because it is actually, it's like Portland cement in log houses where people replace the original daubing with Portland cement. If it rains, that Portland cement sucks that moisture in and holds it against the surface of the logs where it touches them. So I would want this, definitely would want this back, painted, at least one good sealing coat on the back side before it was put up.
Okay.
The small property, the house or whatever, garage, whatever it is in the back, are you doing
Yes.
that also?
No, sir. That was just completed right prior. They had been working on it for years prior to us purchasing it, and they completed it once we got a contract on the house, so it's fairly new.
Okay, thank you.
What color have you decided on?
Well, it's on my phone, but it's a real pretty kind of gray color with white trim. But depending on money situation, and now obviously getting into architectural type things, we may have to do it in sections. So we may start with the worst section, and then unless I can do it all at one time, I'll leave it yellow. If I can do it all at one time, it'll be I saw it on a TV show, and I emailed them, and they emailed me back the day we were in here, right before the meeting started, of the colors. So,
Sounds good.
Have you priced the cost of wood versus the Hardiplank?
No, I'm assuming the wood would be cheaper.
I
My
don't
dad's
know.
a real estate appraiser, and
Yeah.
just, he said for, a few more thousand, you could brick it, but he
Yeah.
said for long-term maintenance, obviously,
Yeah.
the cement's better than wood, but I have not priced
Okay.
the wood.
Anyone else? Anyone care to make a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the cement board as submitted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and the project is approved as submitted.
If you give me a call tomorrow, I'll give you a list of some engineering firms that may be able to help you out.
Thank you. I'll have my husband.
Okay, sure.
Good luck.
Next item on the agenda is the proposed amendments to the rules of procedure and design guidelines. The planning staff legal department is the applicant.
Okay. At the October meeting, staff presented the Historic Commission with some proposed amendments to the rules of procedure and the design guidelines. Members proposed some additional changes to the documents, and most of them were included in the design guidelines. There was one in particular that was in the rules of procedure that we need to do some more discussion about. But if we could look at each one of them, one design guidelines, and then separately to the rules of procedure, then we can move forward with sending it to the city council.
Okay.
I included in your agenda package the struck through comments that came from the design guidelines that we made the changes to, and I have a handout that is for the rules of procedure that. Take one of these and pass it around. Like this. This is good. So in your agenda package, you have your design guidelines, and now you're getting the rules of procedure that was proposed back in October. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, and David Ives from the legal department is here also to answer any questions you might have.
In looking over, what was in our packet last month and then again today, I didn't have any questions. I didn't see anything that looked like we needed to make any more changes. Is that something, if that's agreed, is that something we could go ahead and okay? Or do we do it all together?
I'd like to keep them separate,
Okay.
if we could do that. Okay. And I want to
I would just comment about one of the questions that was raised back in October. It had to do with whether the city, when the city was going to do some kind of work there, would do a similar kind of application that a contractor or a homeowner would do. And we went back and looked at that and went back and looked at the zoning ordinance. And when this issue came up a couple of years ago, there was an amendment made to the zoning ordinance, and I'm passing that out to you. It is the highlighted portion that was added to the zoning ordinance. And so it requires, barring an emergency, that if the city is going to make any changes, that the city bring that to you for review. And our feeling is that that is sufficient, and that it would, if we did anything, it would complicate it or have something contradictory if we tried to add something into the rules of procedure on it. We believe that the coverage in the zoning ordinance is sufficient. So we're proposing not to make that change that was discussed a couple of months ago, but I think everything else that was discussed at that time, I think we have incorporated.
Mm-hmm. We just have to remember it. Remember that it's in the ordinance.
Well, if we can't remember it in the ordinance, we wouldn't remember it in the rules of procedure either. So hopefully we will.
Oh, gray hair here.
Speak for yourself.
And I agree with Robert, separate motions would be appropriate.
So first off, we're looking at the rules of procedure. Is that correct?
Either one.
Yeah.
Either one.
Was that your comment, Linda, regarding the rules of procedure? Anyone else have any comments on the rules of procedure? Looks like they're kind of housekeeping, capitalization and
For the most part, I believe that's
that sort of thing.
accurate.
So,
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the changes that staff has come up with to the rules of procedure.
we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries, and so let's then go to the other part.
Design guidelines.
The design guidelines, okay, and that's this one that's numbered page 7 and 8? Or is that,
That's included in your agenda package.
okay, that's in the packet, okay, so the design guidelines,
Oh, okay.
which would be on the following pages, correct?
Just to be clear, we approved the highlighted or the one sheet document just a few moments ago, correct?
Well, the
design
highlighted
guidelines
is
the one that's marked up.
the highlighted is for your information of
Yeah,
what's in the zoning ordinance.
That's what
So
we just approved, is this one sheet.
Right.
yes,
So now we're reviewing the marked up one now, which is the design guidelines, just to make
Okay.
sure we're all on the same page and voting for the one.
Thank you.
Otherwise, we might get somebody else for governor in here. We don't know.
Well, I wasn't planning on running.
Well, you may get elected.
All right, so I had it confused then, because I was looking at the rules of procedure.
I was too.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the design guidelines section before our last meeting, and I think it accurately notes the changes that were recommended, and it's been, in my opinion, made a better document, and I would highly recommend approval of the document as revised.
Any other comments, anyone? Do you want to make that a motion?
So moved.
Second?
And we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. So we have approved the amendments to the rules of procedure and the amendments to the design guidelines. Any other comments on that, or thoughts? Okay. I see there's no place for new business on here.
No. That's
Not
right.
that we need any, but-
This is a special meeting. This is a special meeting.
Okay, so we can't
All we can talk
discuss
about today.
Okay. I just want to mention that I did email several people, not everyone. I think I sent it to you, Robert. Notes from the Tennessee Historical Commission on the ability to apply for grants to consider creating historic districts and that sort of thing. So just something to think about for the next meeting.
Okay.
Robert, is there sufficient time? We may still have a standard meeting this month, or are we done for this month? Is the time lapse?
The deadline is for today.
Okay.
and had you received anything?
No.
So we're done this month.
I might get up there and may have something, but.
Okay.
If not, Merry Christmas.
Yes, me too.
Motion to adjourn
So moved.
and seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Okay. Good job. Good job.